Hello, friends, and welcome back to the PrepWell podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to address college athletic recruiting, and specifically the widespread belief, I should say myth, in my opinion, that if you are a gifted high school athlete with the potential to be a Division I, Division II, or Division III college athlete, that without much work on your part, other than being the best player that you can be, college coaches will eventually come knocking on your door, offering you full-ride scholarships. And your job is to sit back, field these calls, create a spreadsheet with the pros and the cons of all the offers coming in, and ultimately make your final choice when you're good and ready. Unfortunately, this scenario applies to a vanishingly small percentage of high school student athletes. And those athletes typically know who they are by 7th or 8th grade. But it seems like this happens more than it does because of all the social media hype surrounding these athletes. But the reality is far different. For most athletes, getting legitimately recruited by college coaches from Division I to Division III is much more involved than sitting by the phone waiting for it to ring or waiting for a text. And unfortunately, by the time most athletes and their parents figure this out, it's too late. The recruiting window has closed by then, no coaches have called, and you're left wondering how and why you missed out. And then the family is embarrassed that they spent 10 years and $100,000 and endless weekends participating in a sport that the child will not continue in college. So they don't talk about it. Why would they? It's not a happy ending. So it gets ignored like it never even happened. Poof, it just disappears. And so the mystique and the myth continues to grow unchecked. The next generation of student athletes coming up the ranks, they don't hear about any of these stories because no one talks about them. And instead, they hear about the few success stories, and they get sucked into the same old vortex, and the cycle repeats itself. Here's a sampling of what I hear from parents and students when I ask them how their recruiting process is going. They say, I'm waiting for the coaches to call me, or the coaches already know who all the good players are, and they're reaching out to them. I hope I'm one of them. Or I've got my profile and my highlight video all ready to go on XYZ database, and I'm told that coaches search this database, they'll find my profile, reach out to me, and offer me that full ride. Or they'll say, I'm waiting until I make the A club team to start filming for my highlight reel. Then I'll really start to take the process seriously. Or they'll say, I just had a great summer showcase. I made the all-star team. I saw the college coaches on the sidelines with their clipboards. Now I'm just waiting to hear from them. These are all very misguided perceptions. Again, there are some cases where these scenarios do happen, and coaches contact athletes who haven't really done much in the way of outreach, but I'm here to tell you that they are very few and far between, and it's not something to bank on. And I hope after today's episode that you will not assume that coaches will be lining up at your door if you do not do a lot of legwork early on in the process. You have to prime the pump. It probably won't happen otherwise. Let me reiterate, there are exceptions to this rule. Because if you are a highly ranked 4- or 5-star football or basketball prospect that has been on coaches' radars since 6th and 7th grade, then the recruiting process is a bit different. You will likely field more calls and text messages than you can probably handle. However, these athletes are not the norm, and they have their own set of challenges. So what's the bottom line? Your average, highly skilled athlete who aspires to play sports in college, no matter what level, yes, even Division III, must take the offensive with respect to their outreach to coaches, period. There is no time or room for passivity, for laziness, for procrastination, or ignorance. Unless you are a top-tier athlete, I'm talking everyone knows your name elite athlete, you need to think about the recruiting process like you are applying for your dream job. You cannot sit back and wait for the phone to ring. You need to engage in an active and aggressive marketing campaign. Coaches have hundreds, if not thousands of players, emailing them all the time, with every single new class coming up. Some of these prospects have zero chance of breaking through. Others are already on the radar, and most are somewhere in the middle. It's a classic bell curve, and it's your job to get from somewhere in the middle onto the short list. Now, before I go much further, I'm going to quickly recap at a very high level the basics of recruiting and scholarships and athletic support. I've addressed this at length in several previous episodes, so I'm going to make this quick. First off, every college does not offer full ride athletic scholarships for every sport. I know you may have overheard your neighbor say that they heard of someone who's on a full ride scholarship to XYZ college for soccer or crew or water polo or baseball, for example. That is probably not the case, because those sports are what's called equivalency sports, which means a college coach is given the equivalent of, say, 8 full scholarship spots for a roster of 22 players. That means that the coach needs to divvy up the equivalent of 8 full scholarships into partial scholarships for up to 22 players, which means players get varying levels of scholarship money, if any, and very few, if any, will receive the amount that would be considered a full ride. It doesn't mean that it never happens, but it's pretty rare that a coach can justify spending so much money on a single player. Most college sports are equivalency sports. They include sports like swimming, softball, lacrosse, baseball, golf, crew, field hockey, track, water polo. On the other hand, in what's called head count sports, where the scholarships are commonly referred to as, quote, full ride scholarships, unquote, colleges are given 1 scholarship per roster spot. They don't have to divvy the money up. Each player or head gets their own scholarship. For example, a basketball program may be given 12 full scholarships for 12 roster spots. That means, again, in most cases, that each player receives his or her own distinct scholarship. 12 players on the roster equals 12 scholarships. Again, there are some exceptions to this rule, but that's how it normally works. There are only 2 head count sports for boys: basketball and football. That's it. There are only 4 head count sports for girls: basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, and tennis. That's it. So be wary of all the parents out there who will casually proclaim at the cocktail party, "Oh yes, my daughter's on a full ride for swimming." They're probably stretching the truth. I wouldn't say it's in a malicious way, but they're just being lazy with their language. Now, I don't want to get too picky about semantics here, but language matters, because when people hear that, they assume that this is the way things work. And many times they're disappointed when they find out the truth. And maybe this goes without saying, but I'll reiterate it here. Only Division I and Division II colleges can offer athletic scholarships, either full scholarships or partial scholarships. Division III schools and Ivy League schools are not permitted to offer any athletic scholarships of any kind. And of course, if you go to a service academy, like the Naval Academy or Air Force Academy, West Point, Merchant Marine Academy, Coast Guard Academy, every student receives a 100% scholarship, whether they're an athlete or a non-athlete. Okay, I hope that clears some things up, because many parents and students and relatives use this term full ride or full ride scholarship pretty loosely, and it creates a lot of confusion. I can't tell you how many families of baseball players I've worked with that were surprised when their son was offered a $2,500 or $4,000 athletic scholarship to play baseball in college. They were under the impression that baseball handed out full rides to every player on the team. And I really hate when I see this happen. Okay, so what should your mindset be like when you approach the college recruiting process? I could go over this for several hours, and all of this is covered in PrepWell Academy's athlete program, but let me try to go over some highlights. In 9th grade, 10th grade at the latest, depending on the sport and whether we're talking about boys or girls and Division I versus Division II versus Division III, your recruiting process should be underway. I can't go into the details of every sport and the nuances of the timing and the intensity of the communications, but suffice it to say that the gears should be turning in a big way by then. You should have a plan of attack. You should not be sitting back and waiting. If you're a legitimate prospect and you're motivated to get to the next level, you should start the process. So what are the steps? Well, number one, get an objective assessment of your potential. What is your upside? Ask your high school coach, ask your club coach, ask a professional talent scout. Insist that they're honest with you. What level do you project to play down the road? And a savvy and an experienced evaluator of talent can probably give you a pretty good idea of your prospects. Are you high-level Division I, mid-level Division I, low Division I? Maybe you're more of a Division III type. Get an idea of where you will probably end up. If you have Division I potential, then there's a chance that there's some athletic scholarship money in play. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, or maybe none at all in the case of the Ivies. Don't forget to consider whether your sport is an equivalency sport or a headcount sport. If you have Division I potential and you're interested in the service academies, which are Division I primarily, and the service academy recruits you for your sport, it would be a good idea to explore this road. Naval Academy, West Point, Air Force Academy, and of course everyone gets a full ride to these service academies. If you have Division I potential and you have an excellent academic profile, your GPA, your SAT, your ACT score, you may consider the Ivy League path. Now remember, Ivy Leagues do not offer athletic scholarships, so you're going to have to prepare yourself for a room, board, and tuition bill of $85,000, $90,000, even more than that per year, depending on how much money your family makes. But your athleticism may help you with admissions, and this may be reason enough to consider those schools. Now, these issues will dictate the types of schools that you should research and learn about, and decide if there are any that you're really interested in. You'd be surprised how many students look at the types of colleges that recruit for their sport and decide that they're just not interested in them. Sometimes that can be a real mind bender. If you had your heart set on playing baseball at a very high level in the Northeast, for example, there aren't that many top-tier baseball programs that fit that bill in the Northeast. Most of the preeminent baseball programs are in the South and the West. So begin to create that Venn diagram that has the intersection of 1, the right level for you as an athlete, 2, affordability, and 3, types of schools that you're interested in. Now you're starting to develop a target list of colleges. Once we have a list of colleges and we've done our research, and we think we're ready to reach out to coaches, the next step is all about communication. Communication and organization will be the name of the game for the next 18 or so months. You want your name to consistently pop up to the right coaches at just the right times. And we'll go over some details on how that might work. You've probably heard an old advertising rule that says it takes 20 exposures to a single piece of advertising before it even registers with consumers. It's the same with coaches. If you send them one email and they don't respond, don't stop sending emails. You're only on step 1 of 20 steps. I can't tell you how many students who I talked to who stopped sending emails because the coach didn't respond to the first and only email. Keep in mind, for most sports, coaches can't even respond to your emails prior to June 15th after your sophomore year. So don't feel bad if it feels like you're sending emails into a black hole and getting no response. You are technically not really allowed to hear back from coaches until June 15th after your sophomore year. Now, having said that, there are ways for coaches to let you know that you're on their radar. They can send you one quick email back saying, hey, we're not allowed to communicate till June 15th, so please don't take our lack of response as a lack of interest. And then they can't really respond after that. Or they're allowed to call your club coach, your high school coach, and talk to them. If they want you to know that they know who you are, they will find a way. Most of the time, however, they can't call or respond to emails until June 15th after sophomore year. That's when a lot of students sit by the phone waiting for it to ring off the hook. I wouldn't hold your breath. Remember, if you're a rising junior and you're not their number one priority, the coaches are trying to close the deal on the rising seniors a year ahead of you. I know in your mind that you're the only game in town and you're really focused on it. And yes, it's true that the assistant's job is to keep the pipeline full of prospective underclassmen, but they have bigger fish to fry too. So be patient and understand that they have multiple priorities to juggle and hang in there. So let's review a few communications tips with college coaches. Number 1, create a highlight video and send the link to coaches. Of course, this only applies for sports where highlight videos are relevant, like basketball, soccer, lacrosse, water polo, football. You don't need to do a highlight video for sports that are based on times. For example, rowing, you send your 2K time. As a track athlete, you might send your 100-meter hurdle time. For swimming, you might send your 200 butterfly time, for example. And when it comes to videos, starting in 10th grade, each successive highlight video should get consistently better in quality of play, in the competition you're playing against, and in production value. It should look cooler. Make sure your videos are improving over time. Number 2, what are some reasons to communicate with coaches? I like to call these pegs. You want to peg each of your emails to something significant that you've done, presumably something impressive. You don't want to send an email if you have nothing relevant to say. That's wasting everybody's time. Give them something that will excite them about you. Now, common pegs might include your end of semester grades, transcript, SAT or ACT scores, an AP exam score, personal or team awards. Maybe you're an MVP of this game or that tournament. Maybe you send them an end of season summary. You send them your team's upcoming schedule, games against high-level competition, your team's summer schedule, dates for potential unofficial visits, personal bests, swim times, track times, something you saw in the news that might be interesting, preseason rankings, a growth spurt that you had. Maybe you hit a new weight target. Congratulate their team on their achievements. Maybe you were named captain of the team. Maybe you made an all-star team or a national team, or you scored the winning goal, or there was an article about you on the news or on some website. These are the things that will get coaches to open the email and take note. Number 3, if you have good grades, let coaches know about them. Attach a transcript. Send your SAT or ACT scores. Many coaches don't want to waste their time thinking about you if you aren't a good student. So put their mind at ease right away, as soon as you can, and convince them that you are worth keeping on their radar, especially the Ivy Leagues, because you have strong grades. Number 4, if you attach a document to an email, like a transcript, for example, or a schedule, make sure you also summarize what's in the attachment in the actual body of the email. Type it out, at least the highlights, because you have to assume that the coach will not open the attachment, either because they didn't know it was there, they didn't see it, they don't know how to open it, they don't know how to download it, maybe their phone blocks it, they're too lazy, or they're reading it in their car at a traffic light, and they don't have time to scroll through a big document. Make it easy for them to see the content. And often the easiest way to do that is in the body of the email. Number 5, make sure your email's subject line stands out. Again, coaches will be scrolling through dozens and dozens of emails, usually on their phone. Make sure your subject line gets their attention. In my son's case, every subject line was the same thing. Kiefer Black, 6'7", 192 pounds, lefty attack, La Jolla, class of 2023, over and over and over again, because those are the relevant facts that, in his case, will sell. And hopefully that will give coaches pause and motivate them to want to learn more about you. You want them to take the next step and read the body of the email. So make sure you audit your subject line carefully and only put very relevant, curiosity-inducing text. Number 6, get feedback from your coach, your high school coach, your club coach. about where they see you playing in college. Division I, Division II, Division III, the Ivies, none of the above. Insist that they be honest. And ideally ask someone that doesn't have a financial incentive to tell you what they think you want to hear, or that doesn't tell you that you have a bright future just because you're paying the club team $7,000 a year in dues and they want to keep you around. Number 7, get your coach on your side. Make sure your high school coach or your club coach knows what colleges you're thinking about. Have him or her email or make calls to these coaches on your behalf. Now, these communications need to be coordinated. You certainly don't want a high school coach to be blindsided by a college coach calling them up asking about you and you have no idea what they're talking about. That makes them look bad. Make sure you keep your high school coaches well apprised of whom you're reaching out to and when. To help with this coordination, make sure you include your high school coach's phone and email address in your outreach emails just in case the college coach wants to give them a call. And CC your high school coach on the email so that they stay in the loop. Number 8, find summer opportunities to get in front of the coaches at the schools you're very interested in. Their summer camps, their showcases. Pick them wisely because you have only so many days to do so. Being at the coach's summer camp, even if it's just for 2 to 3 days, will give them ample opportunity to evaluate you. And that's what you want. Number 9, when you're communicating with college coaches, emphasize metrics if you have them. Height, weight, handedness, freak athletic ability, ambidexterity, something that will capture their attention. Number 10, establish an online social media presence that puts you in good light, either with sports highlights or other activities that are productive and will add to your brand. Don't put dumb stuff online. Number 11, mention other notables about your background in your emails. Maybe your parents were alums of the school you're thinking about. Maybe you have parents in the military and you're trying to go to a service academy. Maybe you live close by to the college. That often adds to whether or not you're going to think seriously about the school. Maybe your sister attends the school, those types of things. This type of familiarity or connection to the school is a good sign that you're serious and you're quote-unquote gettable. Number 12, pique coaches' interests with non-traditional video footage, something other than the standard fare served up by most highlight reels. My son did this during the COVID lockdowns, and many coaches took notice and even mentioned it to me almost 2 years later. He sent a video showing him climbing a 30-foot rope in our backyard with no legs, dunking a basketball, throwing a football 50 yards, doing sprints in knee-deep ocean water, hex bar squatting, catching footballs with one hand over and over again, sprinting around the track. All of these things were sent in an attempt to capture a coach's attention and to promote my son's athleticism over and above his water polo skills. Maybe there's something like that you could include in your highlight reel that will separate you from the rest. Number 13, be consistent with your emails. Each one should have a purpose. They should be pegged to something, not just to say hello. Number 14, try to develop a rhythm. You don't want to put coaches on blast for a week and then go dark for 2 or 3 months. Be consistent, be persistent, but don't be annoying. Number 15, until you're told otherwise, make sure you're emailing the head coach and CCing the assistant coach. Most of the time, especially early on, the assistant will be doing most of the work and the outreach and the research and the recruiting. Eventually, they'll hand the baton off to the head coach, but make it easy for the head coach by already copying the assistant to the email. It takes one step off their plate. Now, I could go on and on with more and more tips based on the experience that I've had with my own sons and the students that I work with privately. And I will say, honestly, some students are more disciplined than others when it comes to these communications. Some really buy into all these strategies that I'm talking about, and others are more laid back. Maybe they think they know better. Maybe they're not quite as diligent. My suggestion is that you do the very best that you can. Remember, you only get one shot at this. And it's a relatively short window of time that you have to be on your game to really make things happen. It's about 18 months. You're going to blink and it's going to be time to commit to a college. So use your time wisely. I hope this is a good summary of some of the tips and the tricks and the strategies that will help you be successful in the recruiting process. Please don't sit on your hands, wondering or assuming that something magical is going to happen with no effort on your part. It probably won't. Take this process seriously. If you need more help, enroll in PrepWell Academy's athlete program, where I give you weekly guidance through video lessons that go through each and every one of these things. Or set up a private one-on-one consultation with me. We'll go through this stuff, make sure it's crystal clear. And I'll say one final word about this. Even if you do all the right things and you follow all of my advice, keep in mind that it still might not work out for you for any number of reasons. That's okay, because guess what? By following these principles and digging in, you are setting yourself up for success in the years to come. Because the next time you're looking for a summer internship or a job or to get into grad school or join a startup or raise money for your fledgling small business, you will need to do all of these things and more. Marketing, research, email, follow-up, pitching, branding, pegging, inspiring, promoting yourself, reaching out, communicating, coordinating, and eventually closing. So consider this good training for life. That's all I've got for you today, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the continued support. If you know a parent with an 8th grader, 9th, 10th, 11th grader, 12th grader in high school that might find this helpful, please share the episode with them. That helps out a lot. You can do that by finding the small box with the tiny arrow pointing up. That's the share button. Click that button. Text your friends the link to this episode with a little personal note from you recommending that they give it a listen. Also, if you don't mind, give us a review. Those reviews help us to move up the ranks and exposes our message to many more people. If you have questions, comments, or an idea for an upcoming episode, please don't hesitate. Reach out to me by email, DM me on Instagram, check out our blog, Facebook page, connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you. Until next week, goodbye, good luck, and never stop preparing. This podcast is brought to you by PrepWell Academy. PrepWell Academy is my one-of-a-kind online mentoring program that delivers to your 9th or 10th grader a short, highly relevant video from me every week, every Sunday in fact, where I give them a heads up about what they should be thinking about to stay ahead of the game. To get these valuable lessons into your child's hands, please head over to PrepWellAcademy.com and enroll your child today.